Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
I recently sat down with the all-important independent voters. The ones you're about to meet, 5 of whom voted for Donald Trump, say they're now very disappointed in him and very motivated to vote against Republicans for all the issues they think President Trump is getting wrong. You all are the all-important independent voters that so many people are watching for the midterms. Anthony, how are you feeling?
Afraid.
Of what?
The dictator in the White House.
And what?
He has no empathy for anything. He will never admit when he makes a mistake.
What were you imagining when you voted for President Trump?
And he said the system is rigged, and he said he was going to be a new sheriff in town. And all he's done is surrounded himself with crooks. How many people have been indicted that were close cahoots with him? And there, in front of the world stage, he looks at Putin and puts his arm around him and says, "This is my buddy."
The divisiveness in this country right now and the rhetoric coming from the president is a daily exhausting thing. I worry that the dictator, the wannabe dictator in the White House, will make it where we don't even have any more elections. I mean, he is like siding with Vladimir Putin. Kim Jong-un is now having love letters written to Donald Trump.
When I voted for Trump, I was looking for change, I was looking for maybe a non-political person coming in and a businessman bringing his expertise, his skills into leadership. He's not very focused. He's not very sincere to whatever he decides to do. Things change fast. A good example is, with Putin and with Russia, right? There's a comment that we are hearing from Trump, and then we are seeing all these sanctions being imposed as well. So I'm not so sure who's running the country right now, and I'm not so sure if we are also very sure as to which direction we are going.
Stephanie, why are you feeling energized as you approach the midterms?
I think I'm more feeling embarrassed. As a lifelong Republican, I guess I would consider myself, part of the religious right. And now the values that I see coming from the White House just don't mesh up with what I believe.
Can you pinpoint a moment that you changed from being a President Trump supporter to feeling embarrassed?
Boy.
Which one?
Which card do you want?
Which one?
Even listening to the inauguration speech, just kind of
very dark.
It's dark and antagonistic, and there has not seemed to be any effort to unite the country. It's always us against someone, or these people against someone else.
You know what's so interesting is that we always hear it's the economy, stupid. None of you are mentioning that. And the economy is going well. The unemployment rate is at a historic low. The stock market is at a historic high. But that's not what any of you are focused on. Why not?
The economy reacts slowly to anything that happens. So I would say a lot of what is taking place now is a result of Barack Obama.
I'm not even thinking about that. I'm thinking about what he's done to our country. Our country was supposed to be a country for the people, and by the people, for the people, And I don't see that it's that way anymore. And we're supposed to let people come in like the immigrants. And what really broke my heart was when I saw those children being torn away from their parents.
Is this the America that I grew up in? I don't think so.
No, it isn't.
So character issue, is it fair to say, for all of you, has superseded even the issues that you voted on? Is that what you're saying?
Of course.
Fair enough.
It is.
Absolutely. I'm mortified every day. What happened with Christine Ford, the accusers that accused Donald Trump, the way that they say they're all lying. Every day I'm just speechless. I really am just speechless.
How many of you are affected by the Brett Kavanaugh hearings? How many of you have really been affected by what you've heard? Go ahead.
Just the fact that we had to go through this, I think it's wrong.
So you believe the women?
I do.
Of course.
The hypocrisy is astounding to me. If they were a lot of these people are the same people who were railing against Clinton and wanted Clinton to be impeached for what he did, and now they are supporting Donald Trump and Brett Kavanaugh for essentially the same thing.
Exactly.
And so now the president calls the women who have come forward a hoax, a Democratic hoax. What do you make of that language?
It's just not surprising.
It's shameful.
Shameful.
He's the hoax, if you ask me. I'm a victim of rape. And to hear this woman sit in front and under oath swear and tell her story about what happened to her, only to have grown men laugh at her, mock her. I just don't know where the bottom is anymore. I've
been a lifelong Republican since the day I turned 18. I think these midterms are really important because the Republicans, I'm very sad to say, have become very, very spineless. They become cowardly, and they're just extraordinarily unwilling to stand up to Donald Trump and his bizarreness. I mean, it's a circus of bizarreness that takes place daily.
It is Tuesday, the 16th of October of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Just a little bit of smoked hot Hungarian paprika makes all the difference in the world. Yes, indeed. You know, there is a Spanish paprika, and they do a very subtle smoked paprika as well, and it is lovely. Probably I choose the Hungarian because it's a familiar thing and always been up in the cupboard. And but try the Spanish one too. It's a great one. Well, George Papadopoulos' wife apparently lied about her age and she altered her passport, and I don't know, something's up. And Papadopoulos is out there saying that that England and Australia are responsible for altering the United States elections. And he thinks that Hillary won. It is really weird with these people. Hillary conspired with the Russians to win the election. And apparently, I guess, Trump is intimating that he had to take over in some secret clandestine way to keep America from the clutches of that Russian monster, Hillary? What? I don't know. We could go on with that. There's a lot of people my age, well, I would have to say, knowing us, it would be our age, who believe in this QAnon BS, and probably within not even the deeper reaches of QAnon, they probably believe that Hillary had actually won the election, and Trump just had to take over and keep it from the rest of us because we're a mob. Speaking of mobs, it looks like maybe they are going to legally attach some sort of punishment to the Proud Boys' actions at the Olympian Republican Club there in Manhattan. You know, that's a Tony part of town. You don't normally have beatdowns by brown shirts there. And I have to say that there's a lot of people who live in those apartments who don't really like that kind of activity, even if it's, for their better interests. You just don't do it. So something will be done. And they had to arrest 3 protesters or counter-protesters, too, because, you know, the Proud Boys had to have a motivation for doing what they did. And apparently the motivation there is, well, any liberal being around. If you don't look like a German, you're going to get the crap beat out of you. Oh, did I conflate what's going on in Bavaria in Germany? We'll be speaking about that in a little bit. Boy, the resonance is so profound. Boy, oh boy. And you know, a similar kind of dynamic occurred back in the day before, the Sudetenland had to be protected. Of course, on the other hand, I think Trump and his crew are saying, how many Reichstag fires are we going to have to create before, people finally get it? Well, it's hard to move the big American giant, and you better be careful what you wake up, Trump. Okay? Because I think people are on to you. And that was exemplified there at the top as some CNN all-important independent Trump voters. They're all important with a trademark. They're now switching to Democratic candidates in the midterms. Some people are absolutely apologetic that they've unleashed this monster. Well, you could have listened to us, and you could have listened to black women, okay? And I only know what I know because I listen to black women. Trust me. If you want to survive this, that's what you do. And if you don't, you do it at your own peril. Okay. So, they're quite afraid of this guy, and they're going to show up at the polls and express why, as we all should. I know there's a lot of people out there saying, stop reminding me that I have to vote. We're not reminding you. Okay, I'm sorry. We're reminding the people that need to be reminded. Yep, so do get out there and vote. What else is on the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, police in Georgia illegally removed roughly 40 black senior citizens off a bus organized to take them to their precinct on the first day of early voting. Yeah, someone got upset. There's a bunch of black people. They're going to go vote. Oh, well, there's got to be something wrong with that. Let's go arrest them. And they did. Jesus. The Trump administration is spending millions of dollars on private around-the-clock security for at least 8 Confederate cemeteries since the march in Charlottesville last year. Not synagogues. No, we're not going to protect synagogues. We're not going to protect Planned Parenthood. Don't do that. Confederate cemeteries. Okay. And West Virginia has plunged headlong into a constitutional crisis as the GOP impeachment of their Chief Justice is ruled illegal. After the break, we move then to the chef's table, where the Florida Supreme Court thwarted Rick Scott's underhanded and desperate plot to grab power if the Democrats win the governorship in November. Yeah, yep. Said his own Supreme Court said, nah, you can't do that. And another crack shows up in Angela Merkel's coalition government as the far-right Alternative for Germany party wins big in the regional Bavarian elections. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. please go to our homepage at netrootsradio.com. We have some links to determine if you are registered to vote and also to register to vote. Please go there. We only have a couple of weeks, less than a few weeks until the big day. And you can vote, but you need to make sure that you can. Okay, so please do that. Also, go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link. Kelly Lincoln monitors that. She'll fill you in with any other information that you need to know, or information that you don't think that we would have. She'll be able to find it out, I'm sure. But she's also busy, but with paying her bills, but she does fill in admirably and monitors the chat room link diligently. She also has a couple of shows on Saturday. At the Table with Kelly Lincoln is at 3 p.m. on the West Coast. That is 6 p.m. on the East. And later on, she and Ricky team up for the Roundtable Roundhouse Power Hour, 9 p.m. West Coast, midnight East Coast. And a power hour it is indeed. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the contribute button. Please do become a Patreon of Netroots Radio. It's even more dire than, I let on. But, yes, so if you're able, we could use it. So thank you for your generosity. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and admirably, I might add. And he's also responsible for our homepage. Beautiful homepage. Please check that out, okay? There's all sorts of info there for you to peruse. You can follow us on Facebook, and Kelly's been doing that live Facebook thing, so thank you, Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I do post a show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. I'm there as Justice Putnam. And follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. We're on Facebook. We're on Tumblr. We're all over the place there on social media. So check us out wherever you are. And you can get podcasts of the show by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well. This first article here, I just love how the authoritarian aspect rears its ugly head in this country. It doesn't take much. And it doesn't take much of an excuse either, by the way. Republicans, and particularly in the South, oh my God. If there's a group of more than, 5 black people, there's a potential riot right there. 6 people, that's a riot of black people. It's actually, I believe, a unit of measure, okay? And so there were black people getting ready to vote on the first day of early voting. They have that. And you go to a precinct and you vote. Isn't that a great thing to do? Well, let me allude previous to this. A campaign worker for a Democratic candidate in Texas was delivering a letter petition to allow this local predominantly black university, the right to vote. I have to say, this university and the surrounding area used to fall under the old Voting Rights Act before John Roberts gutted it because, there's no such thing as discrimination in America anymore. We have a black president. Oh, yeah, don't mind all those armed people on the National Mall calling for his head, literally on a platter. Literally. And they were armed. I don't really remember, the Turtle Ninjas coming out and busting heads. So this kid. I have to say he was a kid. Yeah, I don't know. Somebody may say, well, he's almost 30. I don't think he was almost 30. But even if he was almost 30, I'm sorry. I'm going to pull the age card here. He was a kid. And a cop asked him, what party affiliation is this letter coming from? And the guy said, well, the Democratic candidate. And they put him under arrest and handcuffed him. Yeah. Because they can. So let's go to this Georgia situation here. Kira Lerner of Think Progress brings us the story, by the way. So they're going to get on a bus that's been organized to take black senior citizens to go vote. First day of early voting, everybody gets dressed up, get on the bus, go vote. You know, maybe have brunch. And somebody, literally somebody, driving by, saw this group of black people getting on a bus that had some sort of, it just looked wrong. A bunch of black people together celebrating, actually. We're going to go vote. Our voices matter, whatever, you know. That bothered somebody so much they called the cops and said, we have more than a riot of blacks here. Yeah, it's a mob. And I think a mob is then when you have like maybe 20 black people together. Then it's a mob. There is no law preventing a bus organized specifically to take people to a precinct to vote, even if they have a political affiliation. We cannot expect our constabulary to know that or care. Can we now? When I think of police reform, I think of maybe some crash courses on basic American civics. How about that? I don't want this excuse anymore is that, oh, well, you know, that's for someone else to determine. No, you're supposed to know the law and apply it where due. Don't make up a law and figure out if there is a law later. But this also is a tactic by Brian Kemp to suppress the black vote. Do we have a Supreme Court that cares about that? Yeah, we do. We do have a Supreme Court that cares about that. I fear, unfortunately, that's going to take Brian Kemp's side. Frank Dale of Think Progress brings us this next offering here at the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Well, Trump's Department of Veterans Affairs has quietly spent millions of dollars on private security for Confederate cemeteries since the violent Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia in August of 2017. The effort is aimed at preventing the kind of damage that befell Confederate memorials across the U.S. in the aftermath of the Charlottesville violence. And that's according to a new report from the AP, which reveals the VA has already spent around $3 million on around-the-clock private security for at least 8 Confederate cemeteries. And though there have been no incidents of vandalism in the privately guarded cemetery since paint was added to a Confederate monument in Springfield, Missouri, right before Trump visited the city in September 2017, a spokeswoman for the VA defended the spending in a statement. Private security was needed to ensure the safety of staff, property, and visitors, paying respect to those interred. Jessica Schaefer, spokeswoman for the VA's National Cemetery Administration, said in a statement. How do I know how she speaks? I'm making it up. The agency has a responsibility to protect the federal property it administers and will continue to monitor and assess the need for enhanced security going forward. Well, of course, there has been no vandalism in these cemeteries, but if you want to gin up some fear about an angry leftist mob that will, this is, I don't know, moving your pieces around the chessboard now, isn't it? If it was only chess. Heather Heyer was killed in August of 2017 when James Fields Jr., a white nationalist, drove his car into a crowd of protesters. And Fields Jr. has pleaded not guilty to federal hate crimes. I killed the bee. It's just not a federal hate crime. Yeah, well, you cross state lines to do it, mofo. Despite near universal condemnation of the white supremacists who rallied in Charlottesville to oppose the city's plan to remove a statue of Robert E. Lee, Trump said instead many sides were to blame for the violence, and his statements were then praised by white supremacists. Well, numerous Confederate monuments have been torn down or vandalized since the violence in Charlottesville, but no cemeteries. Chapman of Alternet brings us this final offering here at the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Earlier this year, Republicans in the West Virginia legislature took the extraordinary action of impeaching every single member of their Supreme Court. Every single one. But the entire process has blown up in the Republicans' face. The state courts are now in a full-blown constitutional crisis because the impeachment of Democratic Chief Justice Margaret Workman has been ruled unconstitutional, and there is no judge willing to preside over her trial. The impeachment stemmed from reports last year detailing the justices' alleged lavish use of state money to decorate their offices. Now, while some of the justices did engage in misconduct, for instance, the GOP Justice Alan Lowry is separately indicted on federal charges of fraud, witness tampering, and false statements. The office renovations themselves were probably entirely legal, and the impeachment reeked of a political power grab. Republicans sat on the allegations for months until it was legally impossible to hold an election to replace them, thus ensuring GOP Governor Jim Justice, no relation, by the way, could appoint a full bench of new Republicans in place of the original 3-2 split on the Democratic court. The problem for the GOP started when Workman sued, alleging her impeachment was illegal because the legislature did not actually specify any misconduct and thus violated her due process. There was no valid state Supreme Court that could hear the case. All the justices were either suspended or had been replaced with acting justices who then recused themselves. So, on Workman's request, retired Justice Thomas McHugh picked Harrison County Circuit Judge James Madish to serve as acting Chief Justice, who then appointed 4 acting Associate Justices, who in turn unanimously ruled in Workman's favor in validating the impeachment. It was at this point that everything exploded. The GOP state Senate, enraged that a makeshift court appointed at the request of Workman had overruled them, and they planned to simply ignore the ruling and hold an impeachment trial anyway. But Justice Paul T. Farrell, who was in charge of presiding over the trial, honored the court ruling and refused to move forward, forcing the Senate to back down. Then, Republicans in the State House said they would still present the articles of impeachment to the Senate, even though the Senate was no longer planning to hear them. What is happening in West Virginia, while extreme, is far from unique. Republican state legislators have frequently sought to undermine state courts that rule against them. Well, West Virginia's crisis threatens to blow up the independent judiciary and undermine the basic legitimacy of their court system. And Republicans have only themselves to blame. And I think that's a feature, not a bug. Not the blame, but blowing up the court system. Let's get to our break, and when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Are you an agreeable person? You know, a nice guy? If so, a logical follow-up might be, how are your finances? And here's why.
Agreeable people have lower savings, they have higher debt, and they're also more likely to go bankrupt or default on their loans.
Sandra Matz is a computational social scientist at the Columbia Business School in New York City, and using a combination of questionnaires and bank data, she and her colleague Joe Gladstone found that people who score as more agreeable on personality tests have a better chance of ending up in dire financial straits, especially if they're low income to begin with. The researchers also combined personality data on millions of people in the U.S. and the U.K. with regional data on how many people were unable to pay their debts. And they found, again, that the nicer a county or local area's people on average, the worse their finances. Matz thinks one factor could be that agreeable people just don't care much about money. Maybe they pick up the tab more often or loan money when they can't afford to. They're generous to a fault. So how do you get them to wise up?
So one way that we could actually kind of reframe this is saying, like, you don't care about money just for yourself, but care about it for your family. Care about it for the people that you love. Because if you mismanage your money, it's not just going to affect you, but it's also going to affect all the people around you that you care about and that you love deeply.
Which might translate agreeable people's superpower, which is caring about other people, into better financial sense. The results are in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. So if Matz does succeed in teaching nice people to be more stingy, who's going to pick up the tab?
Well, then it's like a matter of negotiating, right? Then it should just be more equally distributed. So if the agreeable person suddenly says, look, I can't pay all the time, I'm very happy to do that once in a while, but I also want you to kind of give something back, because that's what makes a relationship and not a one-way street.
Which might mean agreeable people need to get a little more comfortable having disagreeable conversations. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Multiple reports claim that the Saudis are preparing to acknowledge that journalist Jamal Khashoggi was killed in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul and that he died as the result of an interrogation gone wrong. Riyadh will reportedly claim they plan to rendition the dissident out of Turkey and back to the kingdom. This from CNN.
This report is most likely going to conclude that the operation was carried out without clearance and transparency and that those involved will be held responsible. Of course, the backdrop of all of this is coming just as Turkish investigators, the forensics team, was allowed inside the Saudi consulate. Those involved, who are they? Well, throughout our reporting of all of this, the Turks have always been saying that there are 15 Saudi nationals who are persons of interest who arrived in country the same day that Jamal Khashoggi did go missing. If the Saudis do in fact come out with this statement, this could be their way of distancing themselves from what happened. There had been, prior to the announcement of this, some speculation, and we heard President Trump speculating about this as well, that perhaps there would be this narrative of rogue elements who did carry out this killing without the authority necessarily of the uppermost echelons of the Saudi government. But this has been a story that has had so many different twists and turns. One really needs to actually wait and see what it is, what kind of statement it is that the Saudis do end up coming out with.
Trump is lining up with conservatives who have urged the U.S. not to risk a serious rupture with the Saudis over the murder of a journalist. He even offered the Saudis cover on Monday, floating the theory that rogue killers were responsible for the journalist's disappearance. But during his interview Sunday night on 60 Minutes, Trump said we're going to get to the bottom of it and threatened severe punishment.
It's being looked at very, very strongly. We would be very upset and angry if that were the case. As of this moment, they deny it, and they deny it vehemently. Could it be them? Yes.
Jared, your son-in-law, got on the phone and asked the prince, did he deny it? They
deny it. They deny it every way you can imagine.
What are your options? Would you consider imposing sanctions as a bipartisan group of senators have proposed?
Well, it depends on what the sanction is. Well, I tell you what I don't want to do. Boeing, Lockheed, Raytheon, all these I don't want to hurt jobs. I don't want to lose an order like that. There are other ways of punishing, to use a word that's a pretty harsh word.
Tell everybody what's at stake here.
Yeah. There's a lot at stake, and maybe especially so because this man was a reporter. There's something, you'll be surprised to hear me say that, there's something really terrible and disgusting about that if that were the case. So we're going to have to see. We're going to get to the bottom of it, and there will be severe punishment.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo arrived in Saudi Arabia Tuesday for crisis talks with King Salman. The U.S. government closed the 2018 fiscal year $779 billion in the red, its highest deficit in 6 years. The shortfall is due to the Republican-led tax cuts eating into revenues. A federal judge on Monday dismissed a defamation lawsuit filed by Stormy Daniels against the president and ordered the porn star to pay Trump's legal fees. Senator Elizabeth Warren told Donald Trump to pony up on his $1 million challenge he made earlier this year when he said he'd bet that she wouldn't get a DNA test done to prove her Native American ancestry, which she just did. Warren revealed her DNA test results on Monday, and they showed that she does indeed have Native American ancestry, undermining repeated jibes from prominent Republicans that she was fabricating her heritage. Trump said this at a rally in July.
I will give you $1 million to your favorite charity, paid for by Trump, if you take the test and it shows you're an Indian, you know. And let's see what she does, right?
Trump was asked about paying up by a reporter on Monday as he was leaving the White House.
What is your reaction to Senator Elizabeth Warren releasing the results of her DNA test?
No, I have no. Who cares?
Mr. President, you said you
Who cares?
$1 million to charity.
I didn't say that. You better read it again.
Mr. President, what is your...
Later in the day, Trump changed the conditions of his offer.
Mr. President, Senator Warren released some of her DNA results that show a strong likelihood that she does have Native American roots.
How much? 1,000?
Do you owe her an apology?
No, I don't.
What about the money that
I owe her. She owes the country an apology. What's the percentage? 1,000?
I don't have have the exact numbers.
Okay, tell me, when you have the percentage, tell me what the percentage is.
What about the money that you told her you would...
You mean if she gets the nomination in a debate where I was going to have her tested, I'll only do it if I can test her personally. Okay, that will not be something I enjoy doing either.
Warren told Trump to donate the $1 million to the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, a nonprofit group that helps protect Native American women from violence. She wrote, quote, "I took this test and released the results for anyone who cares to see because I've got nothing to hide. What are you hiding at Real Donald Trump? Release your tax returns or the Democratic-led House will do it for you soon enough. Tick-tock, Mr. President." And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
If it's class warfare, we're the People's Army.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
I'm Mark Boulanger.
I say union, you say power. Union! Stand up! I say union, you say power! Union! Union! Stand up, find your voice! I say union, you say power! Union!
That is Paddy Crumlin, the president of the International Transport Workers Federation. The ITF is holding its 44th Congress in Singapore, October 14th to 20th. The federation, created in 1896, represents 20 million workers who are members of 670 unions in 140 countries. They are seafarers, dockers, and rail workers. They work in road and urban transport, fisheries, inland navigation, and tourism. Mr. Crumlin.
Trade unionism is one of the vehicles for genuine democracy, wealth creation, and wealth redistribution. And it's not a model with a singular answer. There is as much answers as there is in the diversity of our family, in our gender, in our cultures, in our ethnicity, and in our ages. The thing about the ITF is it brings people together on the basis of redistribution and fairness and peace and functionality in a world that is looking for political leadership, spiritual leadership, and a values-driven resurgence. At a time when there's nothing more critical with global warming, with the redistribution of the wealth polarised around economic and commercial elites, with the failure of the political process and the determination by people all over the world of no trust in their political leaderships, we stand together in a way that our diversity makes things happen. We're proud about who we are. We're proud about our differences. Our differences bring us together. We are speaking about an ability to engage in our mutual interests in a way that human beings and humanity can have succour and a willingness and an affirmation, where aspirations can be rewarded, where we can be combined by our diversity and not the things that keep us apart, that we're creating a world for the many and just not the few. What a wonderful thing. What a wonderful achievement. What an aspiration and a determination that we can change the world. You can change the world. We can change the world. The ITF can change the world. We are going to make policies and resolution. We're going to challenge the right of seafarers and dockers. Where urban transport is going to develop and build better working communities. Where rail and road and aviation is about inclusion, not exclusion. That all the things that link us together across the world have an underlying connection, which is human beings and the organisations they choose to be a part of. You choose to be here. No one brought you here. You choose to make a difference. You know the ITF is the difference. And we're going to go out of here in the vanguard of the interests of international transport workers and working communities everywhere because of our determination and our courage to stand up and be as one in our diversity, and we will change the world. We not only make a difference, we are the difference. Youth, women, all of us, a willingness to engage in ownership, not a bureaucracy, not the paucity of institutional laziness, not a doff of the cap to the elites and the powers, a willingness to change the world, to get to know each other better, to use empathy and sympathy, to be willing to be part of the great thing of being a human being.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 36 degrees Fahrenheit. There is an active hard freeze warning in the area. Fortunately, in my tiny little microclimate here where the mothership resides at positively 3rd and Marie, we're a little warmer than that, fortunately. But the surrounding areas are, some might say, bitterly cold, but I don't consider it bitterly cold until it's in the teens. Then we can talk bitter. And when I say teens, maybe, below zero. Or above zero. Both, I can't tell the difference. Can you? When it's 2 degrees or 20 below. Feels the same. It's bitterly cold. Keep me away from it. We are expected to be a bit warmer as we prophesied yesterday. And we should be in the mid-80s today. The winds are right now out of the east-northeast, a negligible 1 mile per hour. And we should be fair for most of the day. Winds will remain light and variable out of the east-northeast through tomorrow morning at least. Right now, ragweed pollen is moderate. The air quality index is in the good range at 22 parts per million, a little high in the good range. A little bit on the higher part, above average. The median. But people are burning wood in their fireplaces because it is fairly cold. But we are watching the daytime UV index drop to now 2 on the daytime UV index, which is officially in the low range. I think it's a combination, of course, of the angle of the sun because of the season, but also because we are in more northern climes. Pressure is holding steady at 30.24 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 44%. So a little dry and could get drier. Well, we need rain. Bring it on. Just not freezing rain. We don't want that yet. Okay, weather from around the world is brought to you by People's Personal Weather Stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 67 and partly cloudy. Paris is 77 and sunny. Rome is 74 and mostly cloudy with, get this, thunderstorms in the area that might disrupt the electrical grid. In October, confluence of hot and cold. Give me a break. Well, Kiev, though, is 66 and fair. Kabul is 52 and partly cloudy. I'd still stay in. The drones can fly under the partly cloudy ceiling. Okay? So probably no wedding parties today. Hong Kong is 72 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 65 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 65 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 54 degrees and sunny. And New York is 49 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And you do have a small craft advisory out there on the Hudson and elsewhere that there's water. So be careful if you're in a small craft. And you are going to be much cooler today, too, by the way. And gusts will be out of the north. So, yeah, do take care. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. This first offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is also brought to us by Matthew Chapman at Alternate. This year, Florida has very good odds of electing Andrew Gillum, the charismatic progressive Tallahassee mayor, as their next governor. And I know he's mayor, but I wish they would say that he's running for governor. They always say Mayor of Tallahassee, like when the hurricanes are coming or whatever. He's running for governor. But outgoing GOP Governor Rick Scott thought he had a perfect plan to ensure that even if Gillum won, the state courts would remain in solid Republican control for years and years and years to come. On Monday, however, the Florida Supreme Court put a stop to his scheme. Scott's idea was that on his last day in office, he would appoint 3 Republicans to the Florida Supreme Court. The state constitution says that 3 existing Democratic-appointed justices on the court would hit mandatory retirement on the same date he would exit the governor's mansion, January 8th. Scott twisted the meaning of this to interpret it as the justices would be out of office at midnight on January 8th, but he would still be governor until the moment the next governor is sworn in, meaning he would have a window of a few hours to jam his own cronies onto the court instead of the next governor being able to jam his cronies on. Both sides. Last month, in anticipation of this, Scott ordered the Judicial Nominating Commission, whose members he himself appointed, to give him a list of candidates to pick from on January 8th. Had Scott gone through with this scheme, the Florida Supreme Court would have gone from a 4-3 Republican appointees, they had 4, Democrats had 3, to 7 Republicans and no Dems, all but ensuring the state courts would become a rubber stamp for the GOP regardless of who won the governor's race. But following a lawsuit by the League of Women Voters, those commie women voters, and they're in a league, the Florida Supreme Court itself has now weighed in against this plan in a ruling that blocks Scott from making the appointments. The governor, who was elected in the November 2018 general election as the sole authority to fill the vacancies, state justices said, noting that Scott exceeded his authority by directing the Supreme Court Judicial Nominating Commission to submit its nominations to fill these vacancies by November 10th, 2018. Well, the justices will further decide the question of when the nominating commission can certify its nominations after oral arguments on November 8th, 2 days after the election is held. The effect of this decision will be fairly moot if Republican nominee Ron DeSantis manages to win in November. But whatever happens, Floridians can now be confident they will have a say in the composition of their state courts when they head to the polls to elect their governor.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Luke Barnes of Think Progress brings us this final offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel braced yesterday for more political turbulence after the Christian Socialist Union, or Social Union, a party which has long been allied with Merkel's Christian Democratic Union, suffered a humiliating defeat in Bavarian regional elections. Fringe parties, such as the far-right Alternative for Germany party, by contrast, came away from the elections victorious. On Sunday, the Christian Socialist Union recorded its worst election performance in Bavaria for more than 6. That is 6. An upside-down 9. 6 decades. Securing only 37.2% of the vote, meaning it will have to govern Bavaria as part of a coalition for the first time since World War II. The center-left Social Democratic Party, who nationally have formed a governing coalition with Merkel's party, also had a terrible performance, dropping by more than 10 points. Groups at the outer edges of the political spectrum, meanwhile, were more successful. The pro-immigration Greens party got 17.5% of the vote, while the far-right Alternative for Germany party won 10.2% of the vote, meaning that it will sit in the Bavarian parliament for the first time. The AfD now has seats in 15 of the state's 16 state parliaments. AfD meaning the Alternative for Deutsche. While the election was regional, the fact that Merkel's establishment allies suffered such a humiliating electoral result in a region which has historically extremely been rich and conservative shows her fading political capital and the unsustainability of the coalition she formed to govern after a Pyrrhic victory in national elections in September. Looming overhead now is the growing specter of the far right in Germany, most prominently seen in the Alternative for Deutsche party, the official opposition party in the Bundestag. And the AfD is rabidly anti-immigrant, with party leader Alexander Golan previously talking of fighting an invasion of foreigners. Oh, no, not that. AfD has also has an inexplicitly anti-Islamic rhetoric, is against the EU, and has adopted the Nazi-era phrase Lügenpresse, meaning the lying press. Oh, that. AfD political leaders in August rubbed shoulders with more extreme far-right groups and descended upon the eastern German city of Chemnitz to protest after a local German man was stabbed in the city center, allegedly by 2 immigrant men. And in the aftermath of the attack, the right organized a series of counter-demonstrations, some of which involved reportedly attacking anyone who did not look German. I wonder what that means. Would they have attacked Hitler? Probably. As if to further emphasize the lurking threat of the far right in Germany, more than 100,000 people took to the streets of Berlin this weekend to protest the increased influence of the far right, surprising even organizers with their turnout. Indeed. Well, we have to get out of here, but we will meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Netroots Radio has all the breaking news all day and all night as it breaks. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio, and we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.